Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Look, we are going to be talking about the razor-thin margins of professional football. We're going to explore this really fascinating contrast between the clinical, sliding doors moments of boardroom near misses and the relentless, unstoppable internal motivation of the players themselves, something we like to call the deep drive. It's a journey from the absolute heartbreak of what could have been straight to the phenomenal heights of what sheer willpower can actually achieve.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to think about this question for a second. What on earth could possibly connect a Swedish icon, an Ivorian powerhouse, and a very specific Japanese sports coupe? Seriously, think about it. The answer lies in the messy, unpredictable, and fiercely driven world of football. They all represent these incredible intersections of ambition, bizarre near misses, and an absolute obsession with personal perfection. To really understand this, we have to start by looking at a club that knows a thing or two about near misses.
Section 1. Sliding doors at Celtic Park. Every single club has those players that got away, right? And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Picture this. The year is 2010. A young Olivier Giroud is completely tearing it up in the French second division. And he actually wants to go to Celtic. He even wrote later that playing in their legendary stadium was literally the stuff of dreams. But the chairman of the French club Montpellier wanted him instead. So how did he talk him out of it? He got on the phone, heavily emphasized the low quality of Scottish football, and basically terrified Giroud by asking, "What are you going to do in Kilmarnock?" That catastrophic mispronunciation of the Scottish town Kilmarnock was enough to scare Giroud into entirely rejecting Celtic and signing for Montpellier. And, he'd go on to win the World Cup.
But honestly, Giroud is just the tip of the iceberg here. In 2001, Didier Drogba was desperate to join Celtic, but his friend Momo Silva warned him he probably wouldn't get in the team, so Celtic signed John Hartson instead. Drogba goes on to become an absolute Chelsea legend. Then, of course, there's Lotte. A young Ibrahimovic was available, but manager Martin O'Neill took a few weeks to get back to the agent. By the time he finally did, Zlatan was off to Ajax. And perhaps the absolute saddest story of them all, Andrej Kramaric on transfer deadline day in 2014 literally left standing outside in the pouring rain as Celtic opted to sign Skepovic and Guidetti instead. Kramaric's agent swore he'd never deal with them again, and Kramaric, well, he ended up winning the Premier League with Leicester City.
Moving on to Section 2, the rumor mill.
So the club misses out in reality, but what happens when the fans get together online to speculate? Well, take a look at this wish list we pulled from Reddit threads of Celtic fans mourning the ones that got away. We're talking massive global superstars here. Rivaldo was heavily rumored before he went to Olympiacos. Alessandro Del Piero was discussed endlessly, but my absolute favorite has to be David Ginola. Fans remember that Ginola was incredibly close to signing, but apparently rejected Celtic to play for Newcastle purely because of the weather. I mean, just think about that for a second.
But we really need a reality check here, because while the fans are on message boards dreaming of Brazilian World Cup winners and Italian legends, what I found so fascinating is that the day-to-day scouting process of a football club is just far more grounded and, quite frankly, incredibly unglamorous.
Here is the gritty reality. Instead of Rivaldo walking through the door, you get players showing up for week-long trials just hoping to catch a break. You have guys like Dmitry Verkovtsov, a Belarusian defender who generated massive media hype but never panned out. You have Canadian national Dwayne DeRosiero showing up for training only to be completely overshadowed by the sudden arrival of Freddie Ljungberg. Or Ibrahim Rabiu, a Nigerian playmaker once listed as a top 50 exciting teenager globally, who signed, got freed to Kilmarnock, and just bounced around Slovakia. This is the constant, unforgiving churn of the football machine.
Section 3. The psychology of rejection.
So how does a player actually survive this constant churn? It ultimately comes down to this massive contrast right here. The clinical, purely business side of football decision-making versus the passionate, psychological drive of the athletes themselves. The boardroom, well, they operate on assets, risk management, and profit margins. But the player? The player has to operate on an internal engine, a kind of psychological armor that absolutely refuses to quit.
To really understand what these players are up against, look at the boardroom level. Take Dermot Desmond at Celtic, for example. He's been a substantial shareholder there since 1995. He's the founder of a private equity firm dealing in heavy-hitting sectors like financial services, aviation, and tech. The corporate machine is rigid, it's heavily structured, and it is profoundly unsentimental. To successfully navigate a world controlled by billionaires and boardrooms, a player cannot rely on just talent. They require something so much deeper.
Which brings us to Section 4, Beckham's deep drive.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the total juxtaposition. David Beckham is the ultimate case study here.
On one side, we see the very public face of the global icon, right? The brand. But on the other side, you see his private, quiet dedication to his wife and kids. Signed simply, Daddy, with 2 little kisses. It perfectly captures his duality. The media saw a massive brand, but his internal engine, his deep drive, was fueled by an intensely private devotion and a relentless work ethic that started long before the cameras ever arrived.
To prove just how incredibly relentless that drive was off the pitch, look at this number, 400 miles. When he first started dating Victoria, she was insanely busy touring with the Spice Girls, and he was obviously anchored in Manchester. Beckham would routinely drive a 400-mile round trip just to spend a single hour in a VIP lounge with her at an airport, or just to go on a single dinner date before driving all the way back through the night for training the next morning. It wasn't just about romance. It was a pure demonstration of a mindset where obstacles simply do not matter if you want something badly enough.
And that exact same mindset applied to absolutely everything he earned. Remember that Honda Prelude from our very first question? When Beckham finally played his 21st team games for Manchester United, he earned the right to lease a club car. But he didn't just get any standard-issue car. He paid extra out of his own pocket for a custom dark gray Honda Prelude with a sleek leather interior. When his teammate David May tried to jump in the back seat one day, Beckham point-blank refused to let him in. Why? Because he told him he didn't want him scuffing the leather. It's a hilarious story for sure, but it shows how obsessively he protected his achievements. He worked incredibly hard for that status, and there was no way he was going to let anyone tarnish it.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this deep drive builds across his entire career. You can literally see it in action. It starts way back in the 1980s at the grassroots level with Ridgeway Rovers, where relentless hard work was just drilled into him. It builds up through the 1990s at Manchester United, fighting tooth and nail for his spot and, of course, protecting that Honda Prelude. And it ultimately culminates in 2003, walking out into the Santiago Bernabeu to sign with Real Madrid, wearing that legendary number 23. He wasn't just signed because he was famous. He was signed because his internal engine made him one of the most dedicated, driven players in the entire history of the sport.
So I want to leave you with this final thought today. Whether you are Andre Krumrodic left standing out in the rain or David Beckham driving 400 miles through the pitch-black night, the football world is completely full of rejections, near misses, and corporate closed doors. But ask yourself, are your sliding doors moments just detours waiting for your own deep drive? Rejection is a guarantee, but how you let it fuel your internal engine, well, that is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep that deep drive alive.